What would keep such disturbed behavior going on?
Well, there are physical, psychological, and spiritual dimensions to what maintains an addiction, which are a little bit complicated. I could go into that a little bit more, perhaps.
Okay, then can you tell us about the physical dimension of attachment, say say to drugs or alcohol?
Okay, let's say we do have a person who's a drug addict, and the nervous system is responding to the continued input of the drug actually as a stressor, and the nervous system actually wants to respond in a way that will kind of calm down because this drug, this substance that is being taken in repeatedly is stressing the nervous system. But what happens next is that the nervous system, particularly the nerve cells, the brain, actually get to a point where they want to kind of tune out the repeated stimulation that's coming in from the drug. And unfortunately, if the bombardment from the drug doesn't stop, then the nerve cells actually get to a point where it's kind of, if you can't beat them, join them. And they actually start to adapt to the new situation of the addiction so that the chemical pathways and rhythms of the nervous system actually accommodate to what's going on. So it's a different situation.
What about the psychological dimension of attachment to say something like junk food?
Okay, let's say we have a person who is a junk food addict and she's having a day where she's feeling lonely, anxious, depressed, maybe is in some pain, and she decides that the best remedy for her problem is to just go and get some ice cream from the local store. And she does that, but she temporarily feels fulfilled, and she goes on again to start the pattern because the feeling of satisfaction is not something that's long-lasting. It's actually a counterfeit.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Mari, you mentioned a spiritual dimension to the abnormal attachment. What do you mean by this?
Okay, well, if you look at the fallen, imperfect nature of man, you'll see that there's a tendency for man to actually abuse created things. So, for example, you have a person who's a gambler, and he becomes really entrapped by the lights and the thrills of games of chance and engages in repeated acts of mischief. So it's certainly something dark.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of God, this may be a delicate issue I'm about to bring up, but is it possible for someone to become addicted to God or religious behaviors? Would such addiction be truly harmful?
Yes, certainly it's possible. It would be harmful. A typical situation might be a cocaine addict who gives up the habit but then goes on to start getting involved in dramatic religious events and revivals and conferences and neglects her children in the process.
Mm-hmm. It sounds as if there are no limits to possible types of addiction.
Well, I think the key element is pleasure, that we're talking about person, places, and things such as television or exercise or your job that will give you pleasure, but then you start to abuse it.
But wouldn't you say that some addictions are more harmful than others?
Yes, I would say, for example, a soap opera addiction would be more harmful. Would be less harmful than, let's say, a cocaine addiction. So we have to look at the physical consequences as well as the psychological.
How does the addict struggle affect his family?
Unfortunately, the family can begin to be ashamed of the problem, have feelings of inferiority, actually have money problems, covering up feelings. They feel isolated from other families. It's a very deep scar.
Mm. How does addiction affect our society at large?
Well, I think child behavior problems are certainly something that increase. You have children who become like little parents, and you have children who start acting out in school and at home. You can also have an increase in crime, crimes against people, property, also even increase in deaths, let's say from suicide or accidents. So the ramifications are rather powerful. Certainly society is suffering tremendously from this problem.